Hi.
Hello. We're in Ray Franz In Search of Christian Freedom, page 296, under the heading Blood and Life, Law and Love. That's this chapter heading. Here, Ray is dealing with the objections to the scripturalness of the prohibition on blood. He says, in December of 1981, a man then studying with Jehovah's Witnesses wrote to the Watchtower Society expressing his difficulty in harmonizing the policy on blood transfusions with the scriptures cited as basis. His discussion of the text reveals conclusions similar to those just presented. Here's the quote. Thus, these passages quoted above seem to indicate to me that the prohibitions against eating blood in the Bible refer only to the situation where man kills the victim and then uses the blood without returning it to God, who alone has the right to take life. That's the end of the quote.
And Ray says, I was especially impressed, however, with this expression made toward the close of his letter. And now again, quoting. Another point in regard to this same subject that has bothered me is that Jehovah's Witnesses say that God prohibits eating blood because it symbolizes life, which is of high value in the sight of God, and that he wishes to impress upon man the value of life through the prohibition of eating blood. And this seems very reasonable to me. However, I fail to see how the symbol could be of greater value than the reality it symbolizes. Admittedly, in most cases, blood transfusions are of little value or actually harmful, yet in a very small percentage of cases, blood is the only possible means of sustaining life until other treatment can be given. For example, massive internal bleeding that cannot be immediately stopped. It seems to me that this type of situation, to let a person die in order to keep the symbol of life, is a contradiction in itself, and a placing of more importance upon the symbol than the reality which it symbolizes. I believe as firmly as Jehovah's Witnesses do that a true Christian should be prepared to give his life for his faith in God, if he is called upon to do so. But to give one's life when God does not really require it or desire it would not seem to be of any real value. End of quote.
Finally, Ray says, to use laws commanding the pouring out of blood as basis for condemning storing of blood is to ignore the stated purpose of those laws. According to the context, Israelites were commanded to pour out the blood of slaughtered animals to ensure that the blood was not eaten, not to ensure that it was not stored. Storage was simply not an issue. To employ such laws in the way that is done is both illogical and a pure manipulation of evidence, forcing a meaning on them that was neither stated nor even implied. Since Christians are not under the law code, a law code, but under the royal law of love and the law of faith, these points certainly merit serious thought and meditation. Does it truly show appreciation for the preciousness of life to allow arbitrary policies to dictate in crucial situations? Does it manifest either love of God or love of neighbor to do this with no clear statements in God's word for support?
Undoubtedly, the principal biblical text employed in the Watchtower's argumentation is that of Acts 15, verses 28 and 29. These verses contain the decision of a council at Jerusalem and include the words, "Keep abstaining from things sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from things strangled, and from fornication." The scriptural evidence that this was not stated as some form of legally binding declaration is discussed later in this chapter. This matter is crucial since it is the prime basis for the Society's argument that the ordinances in the Mosaic Law are transposable to Christianity. While this point is dealt with later, it may here be said that the exhortation to abstain from blood clearly relates to the eating of blood. The Watchtower of June 15, 1978, in fact, quotes Professor Edward Meyer as saying the meaning of blood in this text was, quote, the partaking of blood that was forbidden through the law imposed on Noah and so also on mankind as a whole, end of quote. Such partaking was by eating.
Then Ray has a footnote about the symbolism of the blood prohibition, and he says, as George Christoulis has pointed out, to place the importance of blood as a symbol over that of life itself is somewhat like a man's placing more importance on his wedding ring, symbolic of his wedded state, than on his marriage itself or on his wife. It is as if, faced with either the sacrifice of his wife or the sacrifice of his wedding ring, he would opt in favor of saving the wedding ring.
I guess that would depend on the marriage. That's terrible.
So in the next segment, is transfusion eating blood?
Okay.